What's up everyone, Elmi here. Now, since it is Halloween, and all of you know that I am such a huge fan of horror, I decided now would be as good of a time as any to review one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it is the classic George Romero film, Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead was released in 1968 and is known to be the horror film that led to the creation of the modern zombie. Before this film came out, zombies were widely known through the voodoo culture of Haiti, where there have been all kinds of stories of voodoo being used to resurrect the dead through necromancy and these kinds of rituals. And when this film was released in 1968, it became a huge game changer in the horror film industry, because it is the first film to depict zombies as flesh-eating monsters. Because when George Romero wrote the script alongside with John Russo, he tried to figure out what was the scariest thing that walking corpses could possibly do. And he decided that these creatures should travel in large numbers and attack and feast on the living. And that is what I'm talking about when I say that this film led to the creation of the modern zombie. Because just about everything that you see, as far as the way zombies are depicted as, slow moving and craving human flesh and can only be killed just by destroying the brain, all of those aspects are being used in zombie films and TV shows. Just about all zombie pop culture that we see today, all of that derives from this film. It opens up with a young woman named Barbara and her brother Johnny, who are traveling into a cemetery to put a wreath on their father's grave. And then she is suddenly attacked by a walking corpse, and her brother Johnny is killed when he tries to defend her. She flees in terror and comes across a farmhouse where she holds up with a young man named Ben and a small group of other survivors. And as the world outside is being overrun by zombies, Ben and Harry begin bickering over what course of action to take. Should they try to gas up the truck and escape, or stay and hold up in the farmhouse in the hopes of being saved by a rescue team? I just really love just that whole formula for this film, being just isolated in a farmhouse, middle of nowhere. And remember, this was 1968. This is before we had, cell phones where we could just call help for any time, from just about anywhere. And before we had all this stuff, technology being able to connect all of us, we didn't feel so isolated. And we just feel like all of us are connected today. No, that wasn't the case back in 1968. When you're isolated out in the middle of nowhere, that's getting help is just easier said than done. It's like the only thing that you can do is try to save yourself. And that was what made this situation so terrifying. And this film had made some history upon release, because it had the leading character, Ben, played by Dwayne Jones, and people didn't think it was very common for a African American to play the hero in a movie. But apparently when George Romero made this film and casted Dwayne Jones, he didn't really do it to make this film about race. He actually casted Dwayne Jones because he liked his audition for the role of Ben. He decided, you know what? I like what this guy can do. Let's have him play Ben.
If you box yourself in the cellar and those things get in the house, you've had it. At least up here you have a fighting chance.
Now, about Dwayne Jones. One thing that I truly do admire about this guy is how ambitious he was, how he really just went for what he wanted when it came to playing Ben. Because originally in the script, Ben was being written as this uneducated truck driver. And Dwayne Jones didn't like the idea of playing a character being depicted in that way. Instead, he wanted to make Ben as more of a resourceful, very calm character in a terrifying situation. He wanted him to be the strong type, someone who is always willing to fight for survival. And that's just what I really liked about Dwayne Jones' performance in this, how he made his character, his own thing, and it just worked out very well. And while this film did entertain audiences across the US upon its release, George Romero didn't really make a whole lot of money when with this film, because of an error that he made when he had these deals with distributors, and the distributors ended up making all the money while he was left with almost nothing. But he did learn from this mistake and became very successful with his follow-ups to Night of the Living Dead. There were such films as Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead. And when I met George Romero 10 years ago, he stated that he told me that he was willing to make zombie movies until everybody has had enough of the dead.
Yeah, because
man, I like thinking back to that just really makes me miss the guy, because yeah, I remember the few times I've met with him, and he was such a great guy. You know, I was pretty sad when he passed a couple years ago. So rest in peace, man. And as I said before, his idea of zombies really inspired everyone to think, you know, like not just about how voodoo zombies are, but to see zombies as these flesh-eating monsters. Even though the creatures in this film were considered zombies by everyone, that's actually not what George Romero had intended. He actually thought he actually saw these creatures as just flesh-eating ghouls who just attack and just kill their victims, and the victims sometimes come back as one of them. But everybody kept saying, no, they seem more like zombies to us. And he's like, okay, well, from this point on, I'll depict them as zombies in my next films. In Dawn of the Dead, I'm going to make them zombies. Thanks to Night of the Living Dead, just about every zombie movie that you see to this day shares all of the characteristics of the zombies in this film, such as how they're able to converge and just attack in numbers, how they just love to feast on the flesh of the living, and how they are able to die just from being shot in the head. You know, you can't just attack them from anywhere else and expect them to die. No. It has to be a direct hit to the head. And the terrifying idea of how if you're killed by one of these things, then you would be turned. And there are some examples that follow Romero's idea of how whether you're bitten or not, if you had just died of natural causes, you would still come back as a zombie. This concept was actually used in the hit AMC series The Walking Dead. God, I love The Walking Dead. Cannot wait to see what happens later on this season. So if you're young and just getting into horror, I cannot recommend Night of the Living Dead enough. It is terrifying and just will leave you with an unforgettable experience. So I give Night of the Living Dead a 9 out of 10. Hope you guys enjoyed my review for Night of the Living Dead. Hit that like button if you did, and subscribe to my channel for more videos, more reactions, more reviews. And happy Halloween, everybody. Bye.
Fireball.